Welcome to Week 13 Forum. This week we're exploring the ethical and moral dimensions of intelligence work. On the one hand, at least, the work of the intelligence community is fraught with quandaries. For example, from a Kantian perspective, it's never okay to lie, and it's never okay to keep secrets. Uh, in other words, Immanuel Kant would probably have not made a very good spy, although he was by all means, by all accounts, an excellent teacher and one of the great philosophers of the 18th century. So, on at least one level, agreeing that secrets must be kept creates an ethical dilemma that can be really hard for some people to justify. But on the other hand, you have the broader challenge of keeping the country safe. As Shakespeare once had a character declare, some must watch while others sleep. Um, Corollary to that is some people must keep secrets so that everyone else can be safe. A number of challenges proceed from the conclusions that we have to keep secrets. First, considerations of raison d'etat come to the fore. This strikes to the heart of matters that Machiavelli discussed quite a bit. That rulers, or in today's world, decision makers, are sometimes compelled to do things that, strictly speaking, are not moral. The problem with raison d'etat is that while it provides a powerful justification for states stretching the boundaries of what is morally or ethically acceptable, it doesn't offer any insight on the limits, uh, you know, of raison d'etat as a guide to state action. If the state is justified in taking actions that would be condemned of individuals, is the state therefore completely untethered from moral or ethical considerations? That's a pretty scary thought. A related conception is whether or not a nation finds itself in a state of war. Is that the justification for extreme action? Clearly, I think most people believe that nations confronting existential threats are justified in taking, whatever actions are necessary to protect their sovereignty and their citizens. Uh, but the problem is, how far are you willing to take that? Is a nation justified in fighting fire with fire, as, for example, England did with its fire raids against Germany after the London Blitz? As it relates to intelligence, a number of interesting ethical questions emerged from the Cold War. Was Marcus Wolf a traitor to the unified German nation because he ran the East German intelligence services? The same question could be asked of Colonel Ryszard Kuklinski, a Polish colonel who provided the U.S. with critical intelligence on the Warsaw Pact during the 1970s and early 80s and helped forestall a Soviet invasion to bring an end to the Solidarity protests. Does it help that he was on our side? The Cold War provided an open-ended justification for the ruthless pursuit of national interest. After all, we were fighting the communists. Did that justify manipulating elections in Western European nations in the early days of the Cold War? Here we're getting back to what is essentially a moral issue. What kinds of threats justify violating our moral beliefs, our sense of right and wrong? How do we feel when a foreign nation attempts to manipulate our elections? The war on terrorism provided a similar open-ended sense of, in which raison d'etat has very little to constrain it. And one of the most thorny issues is the idea of enhanced interrogation employed by the CIA and certain other intelligence agencies. Is enhanced interrogation really different from torture? Is torture ever justified as a matter of law? In other words, are we prepared to change our laws to empower intelligence and military agencies to use torture in order to protect us? There are a lot of dimensions to that sort of question. Is torture really effective? If so, what kinds of torture are we prepared to allow? What kinds of circumstances could be considered to be so threatening that they would justify torture? The 9/11 attacks led to concerted calls for the United States agencies to improve their human capabilities. What are some of the ethical challenges related to reliance on human intelligence? Those countries that seem to excel at developing human intelligence also have a tendency to get burned by their human intelligence programs. So nations like England and Israel. Is the development of human intelligence really worth the risk? Assassinations are frequently raised as a moral and ethical dilemma. Ethicists ask the Hitler question quite frequently. Would you have undertaken to assassinate Hitler in the hopes of ending the Holocaust? Uh, to answer that question, you have to first ask yourself, is there any reason to believe that killing Hitler would have ended the mass killing in Europe, of Europe's Jews any sooner? Or is it more likely that the quickest way to end the Holocaust was to win the war? Was British intelligence correct in its judgment that Hitler's fanaticism and erratic behavior was likely contributing to the deterioration of the Nazis' abilities to continue the war? Then there are questions related to the ethics of oversight. Are we comfortable with the rigor of congressional oversight? What are the basic challenges associated with appropriate congressional oversight? What needs to happen in order for Congressional Intelligence committees to actually exercise effective oversight? Also, is it possible for Congress to be too effective? We have to keep in mind that in the mid-70s, the oversight hearings really damaged American intelligence for a number of years. Finally, you have the issues related to the media's coverage of the intelligence community. Journalists have to wonder about the motivations of their sources within the intelligence community. Why is an intelligence officer reporting what might be classified information? Are they doing it from conscience sake, or is this a leak that's designed to influence policy purely for Machiavellian reasons? Then you have the question of whether reporting a story might actually harm national security. Regardless of a journalist's professional norms, most working American journalists are also American. When do you set aside the professional norm that says this is newsworthy because it might actually harm your home nation's interests, as opposed to simply embarrassing the powers that be? There's a lot more to discuss, and I hope we have a great week of chewing on these issues. Let's get to it.